This is KFWB News Talk 980, and the show is Dr. Chambers on Call, the show that keeps you healthy without that dreaded copay. There is a nasty prejudice against mental health problems in the United States versus physical problems that is really quite appalling. And it raised its ugly head this week when Miriam Carey, that 34-year-old dental hygienist, was killed by law enforcement in Washington. I think this prejudice is wrong. It's appallingly wrong. We see it every single day in healthcare. You see it every day in your ordinary life. And I want to explore this a little bit this morning. But first, let's talk about what actually happened in Washington. Well, Miss Carey was 34. She's a dental hygienist. She definitely had some mental health problems prior to this event. She tried to get past a security barrier at the White House and injured a Secret Service officer. She then went on to a high-speed chase, and another police officer was injured during that chase. And unfortunately, the law enforcement had to shoot her to control the scenario, to control the situation. Now, fortunately, both the Secret Service officer and the police officer were not badly injured, is my understanding, and they are both doing well, and I wish them a speedy recovery. I would also like to offer my condolences to the Carey family, because this is a tragedy on many levels. This is a tragedy for that family, and it's a tragedy for the nation, because we were all spellbound watching our television during this awful event, trying to figure out what was going on. Was there a terrorist or was it not? And it wasn't a terrorist. It was one of us. It was somebody just like us who just happened to have a mental health issue. Now, when you think about mental health problems, most of us are afraid of them. Most of us don't understand them. And most of us are scared of them because we're afraid that it might happen to us. We had this prejudice with a lot of physical illnesses over the decades. Things like epilepsy. We tend to put epileptics away so that, oh my God, they might have a seizure, and we might have a seizure if we watch it or touch them. And we've had this kind of concept that's gone all the way through. But by and large nowadays, we've gotten over that. By and large, we don't blame people if they get physically sick. We don't shout at people if they get pneumonia and say, how did you get that bacteria? We don't do that. We don't blame diabetics because they're diabetic, even though maybe a lack of exercise, maybe overeating is a big factor in them becoming a diabetic. We don't blame them. No. On the contrary, we do exactly the opposite. We spend a vast amount of money. We set up clinics. We set up self-help groups. We do all of this to help the people, to help people with diabetes, to help people with hypertension. Whatever it is, that's what we do. That is exactly what we do, and that's exactly what we should be doing. So what of Miriam Carey? What the evidence or the info that's coming out about her is kind of a little bit conflicting. One of the security homeland people said that she was schizophrenic and had been on medicine for that. When the police searched her house in Connecticut, they found prescriptions for 2 medications. One was an antidepressant, and one was what we call an atypical antipsychotic, which means that she could have had bipolar, or she could have indeed been schizophrenic. In 2012 was not a good year for Miriam by all accounts. She lost her job as a dental hygienist. Apparently she had difficulty getting on with other members in the practice, and the physician, the dentist, had to fire her. One of her friends said that he saw her standing outside one day with a leather-bound Bible in her hand, talking to the sky, telling God that she needed help. Yes, these are always danger signs. She had a baby 1 year ago, and almost tragically, that baby was in the car with her during that chase. Fortunately, the baby is alive and well, and authorities are looking after the baby. Some people think that it was a combination, that she had mental health problems, she had postpartum depression, or baby blues as it's known as, and other people say that she had a head trauma recently that affected her. Maybe it was a combination of all of those things. And I know that for some women, when they hear that she might have baby blues, it kind of punched them in the gut and made them feel this even a little bit more. So let me just take a second out and talk about postpartum depression or baby blues and just explain to you what we're talking about. An awful lot of women, when they have a baby, after a few days, the joy of the baby sometimes goes away and they start thinking, oh my God, what's happened to me? They get weepy, they get irritable, they get a little anxious, and they're kind of trying to figure out how am I going to cope. That's quite normal. In fact, an awful lot of women, more than half of the women who have babies, have little symptoms like this. And they tend to last no more than 14 days. That's about right, 14 days or so. If it gets longer than that, a bit more serious than that, we call it depression. Now, a small number of women end up in a group we call postpartum psychosis, and they get delusional symptoms similar to what Miriam Carey had. By delusional symptoms, I mean they believe something that is not actually real. Miss Carey believed that President Obama was monitoring her. She believed that President Obama was watching everything she did and trying to control her. And obviously, that's not true. So, baby blues, pretty minor, needs some help. Postpartum depression, much more serious, needs a psychiatrist, needs counseling, might need medication. And on the other end of the spectrum is the postpartum psychosis, which is much more serious and definitely needs a psychiatrist. The kind of tips I give women in my practice who have baby blues are very, very simple. Let your doctor know what's going on. Let your family know what's going on. Accept help. Build up a routine. Take a little break from the diaper changing, the spit-ups and all the rest of it. Take a few minutes for mom. As always, just like when you're pregnant, healthy mom equals healthy baby. So the mom has got to be looked after. But I think that in Miriam's case, it was much more serious than that. In Miriam's case, she definitely had underlying psychiatric serious problems. And the baby blues, the postpartum depression probably exacerbated all that. There's been a lot of stuff in the media over the last few days about this, and there's, I think, has risen up like a them versus us. And one of the main, how will I put this, main cable shows yesterday evening, the memo that went out at the top of the show said, there are a lot of crazies, in quotes, out there, and we need to be on alert. We need to watch ourselves. We need to watch that you don't do stuff. And this I found utterly appalling. Utterly appalling. This is completely wrong. Because let me tell you this. There's very few of us are going to get through life without having anxiety, without having some kind of depression. The kind of people that this talk show host was talking about, they're on the more severe end of the spectrum. I understand that. I appreciate that. But it's not us versus them. They are us. They are our families. They are our friends. They are our wives, our husbands, our lovers, whoever. They are part of us. And we need to recognize that. I want to remind you before I go to break who I am. I am an urgent care physician. I work here in Los Angeles. I see everything from hemorrhoids to heart attacks. If you want to call in and chat live on the air, the number is 888-539-2980. That's 888-KFWB-980.